South Africa's unemployment rate remains among the highest in the world and needs innovative strategies to tackle it. And according to the United Nations, this requires a rethinking of education, skills development, and entrepreneurship. While in studio with me is Wits University Economic Sciences Honours student, Katelyn Francis, and we are expecting to be joined on the line by Dr. Trevor Ngwane, the director at the University of Johannesburg. That's the Centre for Sociological Research and Practice. Thank you so much for joining us in studio, Katelyn. Now, you were part as a starting point to link to that conversation we just had around the budget. You were part of that old mutual budget challenge. Talk us through what that is about, and as an economic sciences student, how you think the budget should be worked out for economic growth in this country.
Thank you so much, Ntokozo, for that warm welcome. To answer your question, the budget speech competition it starts off as an essay competition amongst students. So they give you a topic, you write about it, submit it, and then they mark it, and a panel, will decide on some finalists. From the finalists, they take you to Cape Town, where you get to do some networking with some of the executives from Nedbank and Old Mutual. You get to watch the budget speech, and the whole thing is just an amazing experience. What I'm hoping to see from the budget speech on Wednesday are some smart investments from the side of government. It seems that they've been embarking on very ambitious financial initiatives recently. So looking for the strategies that they're going to use to promote that growth, particularly in the case of Transnet. How are they going to allocate those funds to maintain and expand those freight railway networks? It's a great opportunity for the government to get economic growth, and it's really one that they cannot be missing.
And as a young person yourself, in that intro, we obviously drilling into the issues of unemployment, and particularly youth unemployment being the most vulnerable in the economy, and you are about to enter the labor market. When it comes to creating growth that's enabling for job creation, where do you see the opportunities there when you look at the country's books?
So looking at the statistics for unemployment, especially with youth unemployment was at 43.4% recently. It is a bit daunting for me going into the labour field. The opportunities that they can find in the corporate world right now, I don't see many opportunities. A lot of the strategies that we see to help with finding jobs are things like graduate recruitment programs and skills development programs. But clearly that's not going to help with our unemployment problem. So we have to look elsewhere. And I think where we should look is through local communities. That's where we can find our jobs.
And just, you touched on something important, Katelyn, that whole skills gap. When you chat to your friends, what are some of the challenges or obstacles that you guys face when it comes to ensuring that you do upskill yourself even while you are at school to be able to grab those opportunities that are out there, so you're not waiting until you actually even get into the workforce to improve your skills?
I think one of the challenges that we experience are obviously not having enough practical work experience. And what we need to do is, amongst ourselves, we go out and find a lot of internships to get on-the-job experience. So that's what we need to do.
And we see that, some of the cuts as the government is trying to cut down on spending, and I suppose dealing with those economics of things, those numbers probably better than I do. But where do you think for this country we should be spending a little bit more money, particularly when it comes to that upskilling and education to get young people ready to, not necessarily look for a job, as you said, but perhaps create their own opportunities and be able to start enterprises that can succeed?
I think that in terms of spending money, it definitely should be spent everywhere in education, from young kids all the way up till university level. But we should be putting more emphasis on entrepreneurship and encouraging people, giving them some empowerment and the skills to be able to make those business decisions for themselves.
Katelyn, well, we do have Dr. Ngwane with us now on the line. And Dr. Ngwane, I was just talking now to Katelyn, who is a young economic sciences honors student, just talking about some of the solutions that she sees that could be there to create opportunities for young people. But taking a holistic look, Dr. Ngwane, is ticking time bomb still the word to describe South Africa's unemployment problem?
Thank you for having me. Yes, it is a ticking time bomb because, as you know, the youth are the most unemployed in terms of numbers, and also the youth are the adults and parents of tomorrow. So it means that for many of the youth, the future is bleak. So if it is a problem today, the consequences tomorrow are going to be worse because we are going to have parents, mothers and fathers who are unable to build their own homes or buy their own homes, look after their own children. And the problems of unemployment, there are social aspects, including depression, sometimes even drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence. So it's a ticking time bomb for sure.
And Dr. Ngwane, when we look at the numbers, because we are going to get those quarterly labor force survey data out of Stats SA on Tuesday, but when we look at numbers that were out last year, we saw that formal employment actually improved in the third quarter of last year, and that was despite a contraction in GDP. But a lot of those jobs were temporary. Is that another, issue that's creeping up in South Africa's labor market, where it's a lot of temporary jobs that are being created in the market?
Yes, indeed. Remember also that the government sometimes toys with various definitions of employment, including something called job opportunities rather than a job. So indeed, and also there's a lot of casualization, contracting out, fixed-term contracts. What I mean is sometimes many of these new jobs created are not permanent jobs. So this is a big problem. And it's the nature of the job market, the nature of the labor market, in how employers, sometimes even the state, wishes to employ people. On what basis? They prefer to employ them on a short-term basis rather than long-term.
And Dr. Ngwane, when you answered that first question, you mentioned a lot of issues that unemployment brings, your mental health and so on, and the impact on the greater family. But when we look ahead to the budget on Wednesday, Finance Minister Ngwane had already highlighted several projects that the government is looking to cut. Some of those in relation with higher education, socio-economic development. Does that not then worsen the situation instead of, us saving that money for infrastructure and so on? But if we're not winning in socio-economic development, surely that would make our unemployment crisis worse.
Yes, indeed. So, budget cuts are part of that overall policy of austerity, where the government tries to reduce, budget expenditure at all costs. For example, you mentioned education. I work in a university. Already you are feeling the screws because government subsidies to higher education have been reduced. So you find that many students cannot afford, we cannot afford to accommodate students, sometimes in crucial, job occupations which the country, the economy needs. So austerity is a short-sighted policy in that it cuts off our noses to spite our faces. It means, the government will balance the budget this year, but for the next 5 to 10 years, the country will suffer in terms of reduced capacity, for human well-being and for the growth of the economy.
Dr. Ngwane, before we let you go, it is an election year. expectations of what we're likely to see in the labor market in 2024. Salaries are not growing. Inflation is high. There's pressure on people's incomes. The cost of living is high. What are we likely to see in the labor markets in 2024?
Yeah, it's a very tumultuous labor market in turmoil, a labor market in crisis, especially because of the high unemployment rate, especially as it affects the youth. So, unfortunately, the ANC, after 30 years, has failed completely to create jobs, and it cannot do it in the next 3, 4, 5 months before the elections. So from a broader point of view, it's doom and despair. But many people are hoping that maybe we'll get a new government come the elections, and then that government, the new government, whether it's a coalition, will have a better vision and be more vigorous in addressing the problem of unemployment.
Dr. Trevor Ngwane, thank you so much for your time. And, of course, Katelyn, just parting words perhaps to other young people, with you having actually had the opportunities to look through the country's numbers, whether our books are balancing or not. Just a key word of advice to other young people out there looking to make their mark in the economy.
The advice that I'd give to people is to take every opportunity that you get to put yourself out there, to not be afraid to try new things, and just try your best.
Thank you so much, Katelyn, for talking to us. And, of course, that's Katelyn Francis, who is an economics sciences student at the University of Wits. We are going to take a quick break, but we'll have more after this.